Last fall, the National Institutes of Health announced a $21.2 million grant to a consortium of 4 local universities in order to attract more underrepresented groups into biomedical research and doctorate programs. Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Laurel Hess and this is Comcast Newsmakers Extended. Joining me now is the president of the University of Detroit Mercy, Dr. Antoine Garibaldi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Laurel.
And your university, one of the universities selected, which is awesome. But even before this grant was extended, you've been doing a lot at your university to help educate Michigan residents, keep them in Michigan, and make sure those underrepresented groups are hopefully flowing through your university.
Absolutely. Well, University of Detroit Mercy is actually 138 years old. Started in 1877 by the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. And then in 1990, we collaborated with the Mercy College of Detroit, which was founded in 1941 by the Sisters of Mercy. And we came together in 1990 as one institution. So we have approximately 5,000 students at the university, with about 2,800 students, undergraduates, 1,200 students who are in our graduate programs. And also we have students in our dental program, which is about 84 years old, and also our School of Law, which is 103 years old. So about 1,100 students in those 2 programs. So in many ways, we have been serving students who are not just from the Michigan area, but many from the Midwest and from that region, but we've also attracted students from all around the country as well.
For folks who are not intimately familiar with the programs you offer, what kind of a university you are, is there a specialty and expertise that folks look at if they're going into a certain type of, looking for a certain major, they would more likely consider UD?
Well, lots of times, you know, the times probably dictate what students might be interested in it. Years ago, engineering was a very, very strong program. It still is a very strong program along with the sciences, but also the liberal arts and also many of our social sciences. Today, business is also very, very strong, as well as our health professions programs. There's a great need for students in nursing. We have a physician assistant program, a nursing anesthesia program also. But I would say that across the board, we have more than 100 academic programs serving a lot of different kinds of majors and a lot of different types of students. So we're one of the only university among the Jesuit and Mercy institutions with a School of Architecture, which is a little bit more than 50 years old. So while we had architectural engineering in the 30s and the 40s, the School of Architecture was started in the 1960s. So as times and also needs have been created, we have also tried to create academic programs that might be of more interest to students and also to the industries that need them.
All right. And also now a little bit more of a focus on biomedical. I don't know if it's engineering or just science in general, as you were one of the recipients of a grant from the National Institute of Health called Rebuild Detroit, which stands for what? Well,
it stands for Building Infrastructure Leading to Diversity. This was a grant program which was started by the National Institutes of Health. It's the first time they've ever done something like this. We are one of 10 consortium of institutions that were selected. More than 65 consortium of institutions competed for this grant. So we're very happy to be a part of the first 10. In conjunction with the University of Detroit Mercy, we have Wayne State University, Marygrove College, and also Wayne County Community College District. So we thought that as 4 institutions in this area, we have a great need to be able to meet some of the requirements and the expectations of the National Institutes of Health, whose primary goal is to increase the numbers of underrepresented students who are going into the fields of the biomedical sciences. That includes minority students, it includes students with disabilities, it includes women. Many students who have not really come to understand what biomedical sciences are, and you pointed out so appropriately, like, is it engineering, is it science? It's across the board. It might be students in the health sciences, psychology. And one of the neat things about the biomedical sciences is that it's really a relatively new field, and it's an applied sciences. So the head of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Francis Collins, recognized this need. He said, A lot of students go into these programs, for example, but many students do not finish in the biomedical sciences. So he wanted to create a pipeline. So our institutions that were selected for this group, there are 3 out in California, there are 2 in Maryland, there's 1 in Alaska, there's 1 in Texas, there's 1 in Oregon. It's a really wide represented group. And so our faculty in each of our institutions will be working on this to increase the numbers of undergraduate students, as well as the fact that we would like to put half of the students who graduate from our programs into doctoral programs as well. So it really puts a very important focus on Detroit, and it also shows the strength of our universities within this metropolitan area.
The bulk of the grant money, how does that work? Is most of it to help offset tuition costs
Sure.
for folks already enrolled or considering enrollment?
Sure, it's a combination of it. So it's a grant of over $21 million. I would say more than half of that will go to scholarships and also to student support. So it helps all 4 of our institutions. We are the primary institution that manages all the fiscal operations and coordinates relationships with the other institutions. But one of the neat things about this program is that after a student completes his or her freshman year, they begin to work with a faculty member in a lab, doing research, and having a student as a mentee of a faculty member really helps them to stay interested in the biomedical sciences. So that mentoring relationship is very important. The students will receive a stipend, which also helps the student to stay focused on his or her academic work and not necessarily on having a job outside of the university. And then some of the monies will also be used for some facilities. We have some needs, for example, where we'd like to expand the numbers of students in that particular profession. So students who may be in health professions, in biology, in chemistry, and the like, need to have more opportunities to work on labs and in classroom exercises. So that will help us also to build the numbers of programs over time. And then a lot of it is for administrative costs that really focus on the student. And it allows faculty members also to be engaged with students in a little bit more ways. So it's a very competitive program. We have seen lots of interest in the numbers of students who are very interested in it, because there might be a student who thought about pre-med and then all of a sudden says, well, maybe I want to be a researcher. Maybe I want to do a little bit something focused on the biomedical sciences. And so I think we'll get a lot of those students as well.
And obviously the ultimate goal to help with the economic development of the city of Detroit, of Metro Detroit, keeping these educated individuals hopefully in our community, living and working at high-paid jobs.
That's right. Well, there are lots of potential spin-offs. I mean, the opportunity, for example, for biomedical companies who might want to come to this area, either to create incubators or maybe to establish their companies, knowing that among our 4 institutions, we will have a good cohort of students who are going to be completing their bachelor's degrees and working on to graduate experiences as well. So we could really help the economic development of the city on the business side as well as on the educational side.
Well, and just a whole lot of sort of residual effects just in the neighborhood in general, having more perhaps folks who live and work or come from the neighborhoods right around your community benefiting from this program and hopefully staying.
Well, that's right, that's right. And also getting the opportunity to work along with schools, public and private institutions in the area, getting students interested in this at the high school level. I mean, students who may never have thought about this as a potential profession will begin to take a look at this at 9th grade in the same way that students get interested in robotics, for example, which is really taken off as something that just about all high schools have today.
All right, wonderful, wonderful program. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about its overall role in Detroit's recovery as well. Thank you so much. Sit tight and don't go away. We'll be right back.
Great shops, great eats, and great places. It's My Destinations, only on XFINITY On Demand. From Detroit to Grand Rapids, now you can check out some of Michigan's greatest destinations. Delicious pizza, Michigan craft beer, great family museums, and so much more. It's easy. Push the On Demand button on your remote, navigate to Get Local, and select My Destinations. It's My Destinations, only on XFINITY On Demand. Another way Comcast stays focused on the community.
Welcome back to this edition of Comcast Newsmakers Extended. I'm Laurel Hess, continuing our conversation about U of D Mercy, a wonderful grant opportunity that's been awarded to your university, and your efforts now to try to get the word out. I know you said it's been greatly received. You've had a lot of interest, but you're still heading into the high schools nearby and trying to let folks know that this opportunity exists.
That's right. Well, one of the nice things about it is that there are a lot of students who are interested in a lot of different fields, and certainly a lot of interest has taken off into the STEM field, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So working along with teachers and also students and also parents to say, here's a great opportunity, this is an emerging field, this is something that you might really be interested in. So I personally spend a lot of time going to the high schools, meeting with teachers, principals, our admissions counselors, our deans, our faculty members also spend a fair amount of time telling students about the many different opportunities. This year, for example, we've had over 4,300 students who have applied to the university. That's probably about 800 or 900 more than usual. So some of it's attributed to the grant, some of it's also attributed to the fact that we've really been spreading out ourselves in the metropolitan area, but also looking for students in other parts of the country as well who might be interested in coming to the university.
How important, how critical is a college education, whether it be a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree or a master's or a doctorate, some sort of higher education when it comes to the recovery of Detroit? We're on a little bit of an upswing, and education is a big part of keeping that going.
Well, it's extremely important, and many people are usually surprised at the small number of individuals within the state who have undergraduate degrees, for example. I mean, that number is less than 20%, for example. And during
Okay, I'm stunned at that number now that you just threw that out there.
Right. Well, you know, one of the things about it, when you think about the history of the state and also looking at the city, when you had lots of manufacturing jobs, there was not necessarily a need to go to pursue a 4-year education. 2-year education might have helped for a period of time, but in time and over time, you find that there's a greater need for a bachelor's degree and also a graduate degree today. So when I go to high schools and I talk to students, I tell them that if you got a high school diploma, you are going to make a certain amount over your lifetime. But if you go and get 2 years of education, you're going to increase your lifetime earnings by more than $1 million. And then it just goes and multiplies if you get a master's degree and if you get a doctorate degree. So we have a great need to really fill that gap, and we're very, very fortunate here in Michigan to have more than 100 universities, private as well as public institutions.
You mentioned before, if we have that talent pool here, if we can graduate more students and increase that number, we may and we will attract more quality businesses to our city as well.
Absolutely. Well, some of our businesses in the city of Detroit and all around the metropolitan area have also recognized the fact that this is a great place to live. So they have not had a difficult problem recruiting young people in particular, the mid-20s and the mid-30s students who have come to this area and find it a great place to live and learn and also to play. So we want to also encourage students who are interested in a university from outside of the area to also make that a part of the decision when they're deciding to go and get their college education. We've done some specific things with public schools and even with parochial schools this past year. The Archdiocese of Detroit and we have partnered, for example, with a new grant called a UDM Catholic Education Grant. And that grant is designed to keep students in the Catholic schools, which have gotten smaller over the years, but also to show them that at the end of 12 years in Catholic education, they will also have the opportunity to come to UDM and we will award them with a $20,000 grant over 4 years. So it's $5,000 a year for each of their 4 years of college education. If they only go to a high school, we're awarding them $10,000 over 4 years, $2,500 a year. We have seen the numbers of students who have applied to us increase this year by more than 200, from 350 to more than 550, just with that incentive. And the goal there is not just to keep them in the Catholic schools and also to keep them at UDM, but also to keep them in Michigan. And so we think that that's a good thing for students, some of who will think, I want to get away from home, but you know, I might not have considered nearly as many of the opportunities here. And 2/3 of our, 75% of our students, for example, who apply, come from public schools. Most of those are schools within the state. So 3,300 out of more than 4,300 students. So we see all of that as a part of our role in economic development.
Well, let's talk tuition, because I would
Sure.
imagine that's the biggest barrier between an underrepresented group, somebody, no matter what race or gender they are. If you don't have $20,000 per year to go to college, it's just not an option for you, or is it? Is a school like U of D that is perhaps a little more affordable, especially if you're in state and you don't have to pay for room and board, the best option?
Sure.
Is it still an option for folks that don't have $5,000, $10,000 a year?
Well, as I put my salesman hat on here, I always tell students, think about the places that you want to apply to and make sure that you apply to those places.
But be realistic.
Well,
I mean, that's
exactly.
what I tell my kids.
Right.
I told my kids in-state public, the
Right,
end.
Right. So a student, for example, who might look at our tuition, which is $36,000, $37,000, may not necessarily be considering all of the financial opportunities that they can get in terms of scholarships because of their great academic average. So we find, for example, that in our freshman classes, support to students is at least 60% of that education. So if you're an outstanding student, you get scholarships and other kinds of grants. Gradually, that number begins to go down. And same holds true with a student who qualifies for federal grants. So 1/3 of our student body, for example, are students who come from first-generation families. They automatically get a grant of over $5,000 from the federal government for that. State grants, if you're a student from Michigan and you qualify for a certain level of based on your family background, then you get $1,600 if you want to go to a private institution. So as you start knocking that number down.
And your Catholic education grant, if
The
that
Catholic
applies to
education
you,
grant.
the National Institute of Health grant,
Absolutely.
if that applies to you.
Yeah.
Would people be surprised, parents perhaps, that just how much financial help is out there if you sort of know how to navigate the system?
I think that they would be, because even in our institution, we provide $50 million to students for our own university financial support, in addition to all of those other opportunities that I just mentioned there too. So I tell students, so at the end of the day, you look at what a public institution may cost you and then what the private institution may cost you based upon all of your academic characteristics and also some of your other talents that we will also provide you with some financial support for. So it's not always about the dollars, and students sometimes are surprised that they might get a full scholarship to a private institution based upon their academic talents and also some of the other experiences that they're bringing with them to the university.
And I would imagine things are the same as they were when I went to college a long time ago. There's work study. You can have a
Absolutely.
little part-time job.
That's it.
There's ways to make it work, and certainly the payoff is
Right,
huge.
Right, and we try to make sure that students understand that it's affordable, and our financial aid officers do a great job with working with families and working with parents, and also our admissions counselors also. So if a student really wants to come to us with our more than 100 academic programs and majors, they certainly need to take a close look at that in the same way that they would look at an out-of-state institution, a public institution within state, and also other private institutions in Michigan.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great
Thank you.
information, and congratulations on that grant. I wish you much success with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us as well. We will continue here on Newsmakers Extended right after this, so don't go away.
You've seen Comcast Newsmakers on CNN Headline News. Now you can watch them on Xfinity On Demand. It's easy. Push the On Demand button on your remote. Navigate to Get Local and select Comcast Newsmakers. Now you can watch in-depth interviews with politicians, public officials, and community leaders at your convenience. It's Comcast Newsmakers on Xfinity On Demand. Another way Comcast stays focused on the community.
A report released by business leaders for Michigan earlier this year showed that while 70% of Michigan jobs in 2020 will require some level of education beyond high school, only 37% of the state's current working age population has pursued higher education. Joining me now is the president of Madonna University, Sister Rose Marie Kujawa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here.
In charge of higher education, working your best to make sure as many high school age and older young adults pursue, whether it be a 2-year or a 4-year or a 6-year, some sort of education beyond high school.
Correct. And I've been in higher education for over 35 years, so we've seen a good number of changes along the way. And although there have been many positive ones, we're in a time of concern, so to speak, because there are good things happening in Michigan, but they have a way of working against higher education, especially for colleges that also, besides having the 4-year students, have 2-year students or part-time students. And so that is an issue that when the economy goes up, students either choose not to enroll in colleges, or they actually will depart for a while, and so the retention goes down. There are some other factors affecting us in higher education, and that is the population. The number of high school graduates have gone down, so that warrants against our enrollment. We also have an issue of immigration from the state of Michigan. The population itself is down, therefore we have a smaller pool to draw from. Nevertheless, with all of these things working against us, I think higher education in Madonna in Michigan is really coming along quite well.
And when you say the economy is working against us, I would think it would be the opposite, right? The economy is doing well. People have maybe some more disposable income to spend on tuition. They understand the importance of education. But it sounds like if you're a young adult and you can get a higher paying job, the help me out now and not really seeing the benefits later on is really what the factor
Yes,
becomes.
and it's somewhat cyclical. That is true. And after a while, when the economy rises to a certain point, or unemployment goes down, and people do have disposable funds, yes, they do start thinking about higher education again. But it's during that uptick when an economy, or I should say in downtick in terms of employment, when the economy was really bad, or employment was really bad in Michigan, a lot of people said, well, I can't get a job.
I'm unemployed anyway. I better go back to school.
I better go to school. And so that affects us positively. And the opposite happens, and all of a sudden jobs are available, and it can take you by surprise when, now that it doesn't have the same effect on four-year college students. Those students generally are focused on a 4-year degree, and they will move lockstep. Usually they are from families where parents have put aside money and so on to help them out.
But the benefits of a 2-year degree, I mean, if you were walking into a high school right now talking to juniors and seniors who may or may not be thinking college, 2-year, 4-year, are tremendous. Just a 2-year degree can help in your overall earning potential over a lifetime tremendously.
That is absolutely right, and we hear that being touted over and over. I, of course, represent Madonna University, and so we try to have the projected look into the future, and so we do encourage students to think about the 4-year program. We do have a few associate degrees as well, and for students for whom that is the right choice, we encourage that. But we emphasize the liberal arts, a little different than a strictly technical degree, for example. So I think Michigan needs both. We need those who see themselves in 2-year programs, becoming employable and doing a very fine job. Many of those, by the way, are the ones that come back 10 years later and they have some disposable funds and they realize if they want to move in their own industry, they need a 4-year degree. And often they come back for those liberal arts, which will expand their ability to think critically, to speak, to converse, to meet people, just to expand their vision. So, you know, education is really important at every level. I don't know that it's good to debate whether a 2-year is better than a 4-year, than a 6-year. You know, we just need people at every level to continue to pursue education.
But higher education in some form or factor is going to benefit you career-wise, certainly improve your standing financially for your family than simply a high school education. Speaking of liberal arts, you know, obviously there are a lot of factors folks do not pursue higher education. Cost of tuition, maybe they have a job that they think is just fine. But perhaps they don't know what they want to do. I don't know if I want to be an engineer.
Right.
Oh, everybody's talking about nursing. I don't know if I want to do that. So would you encourage, I would think those folks, just even if you think liberal arts isn't going to end in one particular place, you may figure it out by the end of the 4 years?
Absolutely. We do, though, try to get students to make a decision telling them they may change their mind 5 years in the next 20 years. And it's that liberal arts base. Again, I reflect on my own institution, which is very much a liberal arts university, but in our mission statement, we have inserted some 25 years ago career preparation. So we do encourage students to look at the possibility of a career. And often I use myself as an example. I majored in mathematics. I was going to be a high school math teacher for the rest of my life. I lasted in that career for about 12 years, and I truly loved it. But when a higher education opportunity came about and I was able to get a doctoral degree, and I never regretted that major. It's not as if I don't use my mathematics, and I can tell you, although I'm not an accountant or a finance person, it certainly helps when looking at budgets and strategic planning, when you can quickly analyze facts and figures before yourself. So that's the point. But we do find, we were talking about retention for a minute, that students who attempt to choose a major as soon as possible are more likely to succeed, to finish to graduation, whether it's a 2-year program or a 4-year program, because you can get a liberal arts degree in a 2-year program as well, although it's less likely. People who take the 2-year degree in the liberal arts, they usually have the mindset that they're going to go on for a 4-year program.
Well, when you're more focused and you sort of have a goal and you know what you're aiming towards, it's a little easier to keep taking that next step.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
So, very quickly, where do you see higher education in Michigan in, say, the next 3 to 5 years? Doing better, keeping more students?
Well, I don't know if that's the only measure in terms of keeping students. We're very fortunate to have strong, a strong higher education base here in Michigan. Our public universities are nationally, internationally known, as well as our independent or private colleges. Many times people don't recognize just how important the independent university is. So it's going to be fine.
Wonderful options here in this state, that is for sure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
If you'd like more information on today's topic, please check out any of the colleges that we've mentioned today. And I would like to thank all of our guests for joining us on this special edition of Comcast Newsmakers Extended. And thank you for watching.